Hey, Dee, you sent me a text where you outed yourself that you called me a wimp on our private Facebook group. What's all that about?
Oh, I might have done that.
You're going to have to explain yourself.
Well, you said I was a terrible influence, and
You
I
are.
can't help it if you're not strong enough to resist.
Oh, I'm strong enough. You just watch. Anyway, welcome to the Garden Angelist, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on several acres out in the country.
We call ourselves Garden Angelists because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Carol. Or should I say, good afternoon, Carol?
Good afternoon, Dee. Let's preach gardening.
Let's do it. I was just outside and I just walked around to look because it's a really nice day here. Is it a really nice day there?
Ditto.
Oh, so pretty. And I walked around outside and I just looked at all my little Scilla siberica so that I could see the blue bee's knees.
Yes, that's so fun. Guess what? I came back from a walk around the neighborhood and I saw, just like they weren't there yesterday, all the little daffodil tete-a-tetes are in bloom.
They're just starting to come up here too. I think we're on the exact same spring schedule right now. I really do. You've still got your Iris reticulata blooming.
Yep.
Mine's still blooming because it's been nice and cool and it's kind of in the shade. And then my Scilla are up. My Chionodoxa are up. Tete-a-tete has just come up. And then I have one lone daffodil out front, out by this window, that's blooming all by itself. But I have also noticed something else. The moles or voles or whatever have dragged some of my Tommies, my Crocus tomansiensis. They've dragged it out. They've dragged them out into my lawn, just out of the flower bed. And they've also dragged out some of the Chionodoxa. But the good news is they didn't eat them.
So are you sure they drug them out? Because I have crocuses that just kind of show up wherever. And I kind of like to think that they've set seed and they've germinated and they're just expanding.
Well, that's an even better idea. I don't know. I mean, I don't have very many left in that bed out front because I did have a vole problem in it a while back, but they're kind of doing their own thing and naturalizing. And I'm very pleased about that.
That's good. So Dee, I do need to confess something to you.
What? What are you confessing?
I went back to the greenhouse yesterday and I might have bought another flat of violas and another flat of pansies because I had to buy alyssum and snapdragons to put on the end of the vegetable garden rows. So
yeah,
I did. How?
I mean, how did the pansies, did they just hold on as you were walking outside? They grabbed your skirts and said, let us come with you.
Well, kind of, I just, I had the truck and I was there and they were in the same house as the alyssum and the snapdragons. And, I don't buy out front where the people buy. I go back to the greenhouse and buy this stuff they haven't put out yet. It's easier for them because then they don't have to drag out more flats because Carol just came by. and they were all there together. And, they just, I had two particular spots I wanted to use them. And so, so they are all planted yesterday. Everything's in the ground and in the containers where I wanted them. And today, before the podcast, I've been moving furniture out in the patio in the back. So it's looking like spring.
It looks like you also put out your fancy official rain gauge.
I did. Yes.
You should tell people that don't know about your fancy official rain gauge. I used to have one of these, but not anymore.
Well,
not the one you had, but I had one that was fancy. Go ahead.
It measures rain accurately to 1/100th of an inch. And then there's an app. And I'll put a link to this Coco Ross community collaboration. I forget what it stands for. Where you record your rainfall and they know the exact location and then they use it for like scientific studies and stuff. So I always take it in the winter because it can crack and get messed up. But now I feel like if we have a freeze and we're going to have some more freezes, it's just guaranteed. I'll bring it in those days, but we're going to have rain. We're recording this on Wednesday, a week before it gets published. And we will have rain between now and then, all day Friday and Saturday.
We are supposed to get rain too. And I'm actually going out of town for a little bit, which is why we're recording this a bit early. So in my garden, I and my friend, we worked in the flower beds that face the street and the cut flower beds. And we're just starting to cut things back. And I sprayed plants in the greenhouse with a natural insecticide to stop scale and mealybugs. It has neem oil and insecticidal soap in it. And it's a safer brand, just for people who want to know. It doesn't hurt my honeybees because I'm very careful not to spray them when it's around. What you're trying to do, as you know, with the neem oil is suffocate those insects.
Right.
And so I'm working on suffocation in the greenhouse right now.
I found I think it's brown marmorated stink bug when I was pulling stuff out, sticking to the brick.
Yuck. Mm-hmm.
So I used a suffocation technique on it called my foot smash.
That is definitely a suffocation technique.
I felt bad, but
Really? You felt bad?
because I thought it was dead. And then when it got laid on the ground, its little legs were all waving around. I thought, oh, I thought you were dead. Now you are.
Yeah, I never feel really
terrible.
bad about that at all.
I'm terrible.
Okay, so
I'm going to give us a quote.
Yeah, good. Do it.
Spring makes its own statement, so loud and clear that the gardener seems to be only one of the instruments, not the composer. And that's by Jeffrey B. Charlesworth.
Very nice. And the flower we're going to talk about this week was your idea. And
Yes.
it was strawflowers, status, gomphrena. In other words, easy to grow flowers that you can dry or are basically dry because,
Yes. And so I got this idea because Renee's Garden sends us usually a sample packet of seeds and an offer to get a few seeds to trial.
Right.
So they sent dwarf strawflower, and a rainbow bouquet, which would be good in the ground or in a container. And the nice thing is it's only 18 inches tall at maturity.
Gotcha.
So
That's
the Latin name is Heliochrysum bracteatus, I think.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah. So you could start these indoors about 6 weeks before the last frost, or you could direct sow them. And I think I'll have an extra container and I'll probably direct sow these. And I'll tell you, back in the 90s, before I even moved to this house, I got all enchanted with quote unquote growing dried flowers, which sounds like weird, but flowers that in essence don't shatter when they dry. They hold their form and their color. And I grew straw flowers, I grew status, I grew gomphrena, which some people call globe flowers. And then, you kind of pick them at their maturity and hang them to dry. And then you can make things, bouquets. You can glue the little flower heads on stuff. It was kind of fun, kind of 90s of me to do.
We should talk about that for a second. It was really popular in the 90s to use dried flowers of all types. I mean, they're lotus. I mean, this is a seed. So seed pods, like the lotus seed pods, everything was about dried flowers. I look back on it now and I go, oh, that looks a little dusty. But at the time, it was the height of cool.
It was. And my sister, and I got to think, she got married in the 90s. And I think it was a fall wedding. I'm pretty sure it was a fall wedding. I can't remember now. Isn't that terrible?
No, it's not terrible.
But the bouquets were all like dried wildflowers and things.
Oh, really?
And yeah. It was very
trendy.
unusual, but they were all dried flowers. Very 90s.
Well, that's cool, I think.
So, I'm going to grow these, and then you found a really nice article that we could link to. 15 plants to grow for dried flowers. And there's some on here, the thing about straw flowers is when it's dried, it looks, in my opinion, exactly like when it's growing.
Yeah, because basically it grows dried. Is that how it feels when you actually grow it in the garden? Whereas some of the other flowers that this person suggested, like say rosebuds, rosebuds, rose hips, people, do those. Rosebuds are soft and pliable, and you actually do have to dry them in something. It's not hard though. And if you want to do it, go for it. I find roses in that particular case, roses are so hard to acquire in my garden period and to get to bloom. I'm not wasting any little rosebuds. I'm just saying I could just go buy them at the store. But, strawflower, I've grown all the 3 of those, strawflower, status, and I grow gomphrena every year. I love the gomphrenas.
You do?
I do. I grow gomphrea every year.
I don't. I should.
It's so easy to grow, and it looks really good with Brazilian verbena.
Status is, I think, one of my favorites because I'm looking at the picture she has that comes in various shades of like pink to lavenders to purples. And it retains the color. They don't turn brown on you.
No, they don't. They stay really pretty. But again, I can just buy those. But I hear you. And I think strawflowers, oh my gosh, so pretty, right?
They are very pretty.
Oh, they're just so pretty and they would make a good bouquet. But yes, globe amaranth is easy to grow. Poppies, you grow those for the seed heads. You obviously don't dry the petals. And poppies, the seed heads are really pretty in the spring. I have one friend, her name's Lori, and Lori is a heck of a gardener. And Lori grows poppies better than anyone I've ever seen. Her garden is full of poppies here.
Nice.
Which is just not easy to do. And she has double purples and single purples, and she just has all kinds. And she does keep the heads. And then she's a big daylily gardener too. So she has to cut them back and stuff to make sure the daylilies don't get shaded out. It's complicated, but she's really good at it.
Lavender is another one that if you pick it more, I'll say before the flowers really open up, it's a nice one to make little sachets and things with. And I did a whole bunch.
Well, one time our friend Frances made us little braided things one time out of lavender.
Yeah. Yeah. Lavender bottles. And I had made those before as well. And still every once in a while, I'll open a drawer in the back bedroom or whatever that I don't use very often. And there will be one of those lavender bottles that I made at my other house. Oh. So I know that they're probably almost 30 years old and they're still,
Yeah, I love lavender. I have it in my drawers, but it's not my lavender that I grow. That's all for the bees. I'll be honest. And then there's yarrow, which we've already talked about roses. So yarrow is another one that dries pretty fast and is easy to grow. I think
it is.
I will say this about yarrow. It doesn't always overwinter here. And I really think it's because it gets too wet in the wintertime sometimes. And so it doesn't finish. And then there's calendula. And I hadn't thought about using calendula dried, but of course you do because they use it in creams. So they must dry the petals and then blend it to make calendula cream, which is good for your skin. But you know what I grew up for? To look at.
So they have several. We'll link to this article so people can go through and maybe get some ideas. And I might even have some of my old crafts stuck in a drawer somewhere that I made with these things.
You might. I guess I'm not as crafty as you are. People say it to me all the time.
I'm not that crafty. I'm not the crafty one in the family. I have people in my family that are craftier than I am.
No, I'm not crafty at all.
My sister.
Yeah, your sister is extremely crafty and she's always doing stuff, which I'm impressed by.
Oh, yeah. And you're like, what? I didn't know you could do that. Anyway, so we are all into the strawflowers and the globe amaranth and the status and thinking about where could I put this in the garden this year? I want to try some. All because somebody sent us seeds.
Another shout out to Renee's garden seeds. Love Renee. Good person.
Very nice. You're up with the quote.
If today gets difficult, remember the smell of coffee, the way the sunlight bounces off of a window, the sound of your favorite person's laugh, the feeling when a song you love comes on, the color of the sky at dusk, and that we are here to take care of each other. That's by somebody named Nanea Hoffman.
Very lovely.
I loved it because it has been a weird few weeks. And so we need to remember the smell of coffee and all the things we love, the slow things. So we're going to talk a little bit about kitchen gardens and Jennifer Bartley, who we both really, really like.
Yes, she's over in Ohio and she wrote 2 books, Kitchen Gardens and then Designing the New Kitchen Garden and American Potager. And
so her master's, we've talked briefly about the one book, I think in the past. Her master's degree was about potagers and I learned a lot of what I know about monastic gardens, Islamic gardens and all of that because of Jennifer's book. And it was her master's degree. And then she designed her own potager or potager, if you're saying it in French. And mine is kind of patterned after hers. Mine looks completely different. And now she has since moved. She moved and she has a totally different garden now. But I don't know what it was about that book. It's still one of my favorite books. I go back to it and reread it periodically. And it actually brought in a whole focus on how do you make a stylized kitchen garden. And last week, no, was it yesterday? It was yesterday. My whole week has been very busy. Yesterday, I went and met with the abbot at St. Gregory's Abbey. And we were talking about how he wants to make his own monastic kitchen garden and where to place it and what kind of things you should make it out of and stuff like that. So how do you define a kitchen garden?
So to me, a kitchen garden is a garden area that I say is well cultivated and usually has some hedging around it to kind of enclose it into a space. It has pathways. There might be a little edging on the beds. Usually the beds are raised. There's some sort of a focal point, like a fountain, like yours has a fountain, or a statue or a sundial.
Mine had a fountain.
Yours had a fountain. Seating of some kind. When I think about the kitchen garden, I think about the kind of garden where you would go out and snip some herbs for supper or gather a little bit of salad greens. I don't think of it like, I'll call it, for lack of a better way to put it, that farm garden where you go down the row of green beans and pick and pick and pick and pick and pick and pick and pick. To me, the kitchen garden is a little bit more
genteel,
meditative, selective. It's not intended to provide bushels of corn or anything like that. That's for the back garden. No. It's just a sort of a quiet, meditative space.
It's a space where you can go out and gather things right before supper or lunch.
Yes.
And you know what I think is one of the most important things, and one of the things that I stress whenever I go out on a consult, if someone wants a garden like this.
What is it you stress, Dee?
Put it next to your kitchen.
That is true.
In the sun. And you would think that would be obvious, but it's not. And my very first gardens were way out there in the pasture. And guess how much care they got?
Not much at all.
Guess how much food I took out of them, except for every once in a while?
Not much at all.
Right. Whereas I go out in my kitchen garden, and this is one of the things I stressed to the abbot yesterday. I said, I have a brick pathway from my back door, my kitchen door, all the way to that garden. And that brick pathway is, and then I also have brick paths. Brick around, I guess they're paths. Brick, it's surrounded by brick too. So I don't have to fight Bermuda grass so much and some other things. But the point is I can go out there barefoot.
Yes.
I can go out there barefoot or throw on some shoes and run out there. And I've got my snips right by the door. In fact, they're in this little deal right here.
I see them.
And I can run out and snip things. And that's been one of the best things I ever did in my garden.
Yeah. And I will admit, my vegetable garden, and I do have seating back there, by the way. I just put it back there earlier today. I do have to walk out the back door, across the lawn to it, but I'm on a suburban lot. And so
it's small.
It's not more than I'm going to say it's about 50 feet from the front back door, because yesterday I pulled the hose back there and it doesn't reach from the faucet, and it's 50 feet.
Oh, so it's exactly hose length.
Yeah. So, and I have a little gate with posts, but I don't have a fence around. Well, I have 3 sides of my privacy fence, but I have a little gate just sits in the middle just to kind of make an entrance to it. So
it's just a little demarcation so that, it separates it from the rest of your lawn. And I've been to her house. That's why I know what she's talking about. So it is not that far. That's fine. You know what I mean? In my case, I live on an acreage where there's cockleburs, or what we call southern sandburs, in Oklahoma, and you cannot go out there in your bare feet, but you sure can from my back door to my kitchen garden.
Yes. And I would advise people, if you have especially if you have a new garden and you're not sure where to start, see if you have some sun right outside your back door, and just start with a little kitchen garden. It doesn't have to be big. And in fact, it could just be a few containers.
Yeah. Smart pots would be great.
Yes.
In fact, that's always start small. Don't start large because you can always go bigger and it's really hard to shrink everything back down.
It is. And my sister, even in her condo, she can walk out her front door and then, 5 steps away, turn and get into her little patio area. And she does put some containers there at times, and it varies. So she could put a little kitchen garden in her little condo area, put a few greens, put a few herbs out there. She usually grows some basil.
Well, I love basil, so I would so grow basil.
So anyway, we're all thinking about kitchen gardens. And when we get to the garden commissions, we'll talk about what we're going to do in our kitchen gardens.
Okay, sounds good. So do you want to do the next quote?
I do. Wait, did I do 2 quotes in a row?
Well, only if you marked it that way. No, you did not.
No, I didn't.
Quotes in a row. I did. See, she put it on here so we would know, but now she's doubting herself. Go ahead. It's your turn.
No, I did that. Leave everything you do, every place you go, everything you touch, a little better for your having been there. And that is Dame Julie Andrews.
Yes. Thank you, Dame Julie.
I like that.
The Sound of Music.
That's right. On the bookshelf this week, we have The Elegant and Edible Garden. Design a dream kitchen garden to fit your personality, desires, and lifestyle by Linda Votter.
Yes, Linda Votter she's become very famous because of Instagram, and she is a garden designer in Oklahoma City. And I've known her for, a long time. And she has now written a book, and it is about her gorgeous garden, which she has edible things in the front garden, and she also has edible things in her backyard, and she has a potager, which is why we talked about kitchen gardens this week.
That's right.
And so she lives in an older neighborhood in Oklahoma City. She's very open about where she lives, and she always plants about 1 billion tulips in her front yard in the fall. And people come by there and get their engagement pictures all the time.
Oh, that's sweet.
And she sees that I know it is sweet. Linda is sweet. She's a really nice person. And so she just sees that as part of her gift to the neighborhood.
Right.
And her house is a Tudor style house. And she and her husband had 2 sons. They're both grown now. And I'm glad that she got to write a book, even though she loves topiary, as do many of my friends. And I dislike it intensely, but it is very nice at formalizing a space.
But she has a section on, sort of the phases that she goes with her topiary, because sometimes it gets a little bit out of hand and you got to figure out how you're going to get it contained again. And so Dee's showing me a picture of the tulips in bloom, and they are gorgeous. There are so many gorgeous, pretty pictures in here.
Yeah, they did a great job on the photography. And Linda is a very good designer. She's self-taught. And she says that all the time. That's part of when she gives a talk. She and I have both spoken at places together before. I think her backyard is magical. And I've thought that for years. I've sat in the backyard on her patio. In fact, I'm going to show you the patio. I wish our viewers could see it.
Well, they could if they got the book.
They would. And that's the point of this, is you guys should buy this book because it's very good. And although her garden looks really expansive, I think on Instagram and other places, it is actually quite small. And intimate would be a good word. And she's done a really great job of growing a lot of different things in a small space. And she mixes vegetables and ornamental plants together. And she has a lot of shade in her backyard. Although some of that changed after the ice storm, she still has some shade. And I think that it affects her plant choices. And also the fact that it's enclosed back there. Mm-hmm. Out here, it's windy. And in her yard, it's very much a microclimate. So there are things she can do that I can't do.
Very interesting.
Yeah, I love her garden, and I think it's beautiful. And I think she's a really, really nice person. And there's some good information in here. If you ever wanted to make a potager or just how to design your space to be charming. Oh, and this is a picture of Bustani Plant Farm.
Oh, that's nice.
So it's beautiful. These are Steve Owens' wattle fencings that he made. He made these last year, and he says he expects them to last about 3 years. And she would have taken this in the fall because I was just there last fall and it looked just like
I love that wattle fencing that's made out of willow. And I think it would last about 3 years, maybe a little longer if you took it in at the winter time.
Yeah, this is permanent. So it's just probably going to last 3 years and that's it.
So that's not permanent, Dee. That's 3 years.
Yeah, it's not, I guess it'd be impermanent or something. I don't know. Anyway,
he's not taking it in the winter. So it's going to last about 3 years.
Yeah, it's going to last about 3 years. That's what he says. He said it was also a lot harder to do than he thought it was going to be. I heard him tell that to a lady, but it still looks really beautiful and charming. And I think part of the charm is also her house. It's a really pretty Tudor, and I think that's why it looks charming too.
All right.
So she gives you lots of good ideas in here, and also a little bit of cooking ideas. So that's cool.
Very nice.
Very nice book.
That's The Elegant and Edible Garden. Design a dream kitchen garden to fit your personality, desires, and lifestyle by Linda Botter.
Yay.
You're up next with the quote.
It was that kind of March day when the sun shines hot and the wind blows cold, when it is summer in the light and winter in the shade. And that was by Charles Dickens. I have to give credit to Garden of Bright Images on Facebook because she searches out quotes and they almost always fit whatever I'm feeling that day.
Neat.
Yeah, it is neat. She's very good at it. And she always picks a really cool picture to go with it. Yesterday was quite chilly in the shade. And then today it's just all nice and warm. We're going to be in the 70s.
There you go. So our dirt is compliments of Gardener's World has started their, I don't know what season it is, but their 2022 season started Friday. 52nd. And so
just think about that for a minute, Carol. Just think about that for a minute. The British have a gardening show that is in its 52nd season.
That's wonderful.
Those are yearly. That's amazing. Anyway, sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. That's okay. So there were many things to enjoy about that episode. Gosh. The National Collection of Cyclamen. That lady was so enthusiastic about those. I loved it. Yeah. And then that guy who designed his garden, it has no paths. And it's just like a wild prairie style garden. And his house sits in the middle with a little deck with no railing. And it's like, well, how do you get to it?
I'm not sure. I don't, didn't he say something about the mail carrier not knowing where to put the mail or something? Well, yeah, I don't know.
It would be hard to know because it's like in an enclosed wild garden in the middle of a field. I don't even know where he has his car, if he has a car.
I don't know. That was, I think the episode was worth watching for that. In fact, I watched that segment twice because I was just amazed at what he did, first of all. And secondly, that he was so crazy.
I couldn't see a path. Well, and then,
I don't know.
That sweet lady that showed her garden. That was really nice too. So viewers,
the one where she had been there for like, what was it,
50 years or something?
Yeah. And she said, and what flower was it that represented her husband? She did it for him because he used to love this flower. I can't remember. Anyway, this isn't really our dirt. It's just another piece of it that's our dirt. But you guys should go watch that episode. It was so good.
And you can get it on BritBox via Amazon, or, you can find episodes on YouTube. They tend to get them taken off eventually, but go out to YouTube, you'll find them, especially like Saturday morning after they've been out Friday night. So the thing that the episode started out with was Monty Don, the host, said that for the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, they are planting trees across Great Britain.
Yes.
And
I love it.
And there's a website called queensgreencanopy.org, which is all about this thing. Now, here was the funny thing. They were very insistent that you have to plant trees between October and March. So if you don't plant it like in the next 2 weeks, you have to wait until October.
Why?
I don't know if that's because trees do best in Great Britain when they're planted between October and March.
Well, probably because then they don't have to water them so much. But or maybe they're just, I don't know, maybe they're just trying to time it right. But you and I decided that we're going to plant a tree.
Well, you decided that we were going to plant a tree. I'm scratching my head saying, I don't think I got a spot for another tree.
Oh, well, there is that. I mean, here there's always a spot for a tree, especially since the ice storm took some down.
I do want to plant some acorns in case my honey locust someday bites the dust, that there would be some oak trees that would grow up around it. So maybe I'll get some acorns planted. I couldn't find any last fall. We didn't have a mast year, and I don't know.
You didn't have any?
I didn't find any.
So he was planting something called Monty Don was planting something called, let me see if I remember it right. Was it a fasciated Fastigiate. That's the word. Fastigiated beech.
Fastigiate beech.
Yeah. Which means I didn't know the word fastigiate and obviously still don't know it since I said it wrong. But it means to grow in a very vertical line.
Yes. And a fastigiate and the beech tree. And you sent me a text and I said, oh yeah, there's beeches. And that's what he was planting. I didn't know that.
Beeches are popular.
But the very narrow tree. And another one that grows very narrow like that I had gotten a sample from GardenCom was a Perodia ironwood.
Yes.
Grows very vertical. Yeah. Fastigiate.
Oh, and I wrote about that. I wrote about the Perodia in an article for Oklahoma Living just recently. It was one I did on trees. We should link to it. So we'll link to that. I'll find it for you.
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway.
So that kind of tree, by the way, is very good. If you have a narrow area, you don't want to,
have a lot of overhang,
get into power lines or things like that. A fastigiate tree like that is all very good to grow.
So I learned a new word, fastigiate. And that's the thing about Gardener's World is you can watch it every week. And I skip sections that I know how to still plant seeds, things like that. But there's always 3 or 4 things that I hadn't thought of. And then I go, exactly. Oh yeah, thank you, Monty. Or thank you, Adam. Yeah, that's super cool.
Or the National Collection of Cyclamen.
And yeah, like who? Well, here that would be, I think it's Montrose that has the national. If there was a national collection of cyclamen in the United States, I think she would have them. But also, yes, I was within like one day, some friends of mine were talking about Monty, and I just shot him a picture I took of him when I was at the Chelsea Flower Show. I think it was in 2015 or 16. And they were like, were you really that close to him? And I said, yes, I was. I didn't talk to him.
Yes, that and a telephoto lens, right?
No, it wasn't a telephoto lens. I really wasn't that close. But I didn't talk to him. He was busy. He was working. He was filming, as it were.
Very nice. So I went down a rabbit hole, of course. You sent me down another rabbit hole.
Because you're not strong. No, I'm just teasing.
I am strong. So I have nearly finished with Barbara Pym. I'm in the last book and it's got dirt in it for next week. That's a teaser.
Okay.
I've been reading Jane Gardam, Gardam, also a British writer. She's still alive. And her books, if you read Old Filth, it's one of a series of 3 and it's great. It's got some humor and stuff, but Old Filth, that's his nickname. It stands for failed in London, try Hong Kong.
Oh, that's funny. That sounds funny.
And so it's about this guy that, anyway, it's from his birth through until, and it's very good. And then there's 2 others in the series, one about his wife and one about another guy. It's very good. And then cool. I am listening to the Maggie O'Farrell book, This Must Be the Place, which you told me that I should read. And I've decided to listen to it. And I can actually listen to it at 2 times speed. So instead of 16 hours to get through it, it's only going to take me 8.
Yeah, it's long.
So, and I'm about halfway through.
Now that you're listening to it, do you like it better?
Yeah, it's a good story. I think I'm about not quite to the halfway point. Anyway, that's my dirt. And I got a teaser for next week.
Oh, good. So a friend of mine got me to read it years ago. She and I were both going through a difficult time and she goes, read this book with me. So I did. It took a while, but you know what? I needed something to divert my mind at the time and it really did work.
Very good. So do you have any rabbit holes you went down?
I really have not gone down any rabbit holes. I've been too busy. I've been way too busy. So no rabbit holes for me this week.
Well, I'll tell you about my new rabbit hole next week.
Okay, cool. So in the garden, do you want me to talk about what's in the garden for next week?
Yeah, the garden commissions for the week.
So I forgot to say at the beginning that I started some of my tomato and pepper seeds this week. And I'm going to be gone. So my daughter, Claire, is going to water all my stuff for me. And yeah. So I'm I've got to make sure she keeps those watered. But the biggest thing is I also need to feed my roses. And it's time to feed the roses. And I'm still cutting them back because I have quite a few now. I haven't had rosette in my garden for a long time. So there you go.
That's good.
Okay. What are you going to do?
Well, by the time this episode airs, I will have already planted peas, spinach, lettuce, onions out in the garden because that's March 17th.
I did that.
Which is tomorrow. Mm-hmm. I'm also going to start tomatoes and peppers within the next week or so because I don't like to get them out there too early. Mm-hmm. And so I actually, by the time we record for the next one, I still may be not yet starting them because I'm not putting them out till close to Memorial Day. So I still feel like I have plenty of time, but the week's going to be spent just doing garden cleanup a little at a time. Mm-hmm. I'm a big advocate of that hour a day. You don't have to kill yourself. Mm-hmm. So like today I spent 30 minutes and I have the patio, 75% set up. And I got to get a lot of leaves cleaned up and figure out what to do with a bunch of junky junk that I didn't figure out what to do with last fall. I just shoved it under the table and under the tarp. So now I got to do something with it.
Yeah. Same thing here. I'm cleaning stuff up. I've also got to buy a fountain. Bill kind of perked up yesterday and said, we need to get a fountain. And I was like, yes, we do. Let's get on that. So we'll see if I get that done this week.
All right. Well, that is it for this week's episode. We want to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelist. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us. Also hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? Word of mouth is still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own website. And if you want to help support us, use the affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we earn a small commission and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.